AEW Redemption has concluded, and this was definitely built on the fly. I'm not sure how this idea came about. I mean, we've known about it for months, but as far as the finalized card, this was put together very last minute. It seems that there was a switch between Beach Break and Redemption where those cards might have flip-flopped, because honestly, AEW Redemption felt like 2 episodes of Dynamite kind of like sandwiched together. And to me, it just was there. It wasn't exactly like this B-level pay-per-view, which is fairly okay. I mean, we're in the build-up to All In, so I understand the tough spot that the creative team is in to build excitement for this PLE or pay-per-view when you have the big pay-per-view that's right on the horizon at the end of August. This was about as close to a Fastlane pay-per-view as AEW has ever gotten. And, this was, I mean, of course, AEW, as I've said before, they do star-studded matches. They knock it out of the park. And I mean star-studded by the star rating system. They knock it out of the park with great matches. But it's got to be a little bit more that carries it over. And especially for the fans in attendance, you can hear their lack of enthusiasm throughout the show, because the matches that were built ranged from Dynamite build to, at some points, Collision build, and then you had a few that actually had adequate builds. Like I'm looking at Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay against the Young Bucks, which had a really good story there, and I'll get to that later. You had some glaring omissions from the show as well. I mean, we didn't see FTR's missing from the show, and we know why. Konosuke Takeshita was missing from the show. Kazuchika Okada was missing from the show. We haven't seen Swerve Strickland in a while. Hangman Adam Page came back and he's disappeared again. Divine Dominion, they had a backstage segment to build to their seemingly tag team title defense for the women's tag team titles against the Brawling Brutes, but that was a backstage segment. They weren't live in the crowd. Mercedes Moné was there, but really didn't have much to say or do to build up to her match with Willow Nightingale, spoiler alert, and we'll get to that as well. And Darby Allin was off the show. MJF was off the show. There are a lot of their stars missing from this event. So this very, very much felt like when they first started doing All Out, right next to All In, where they had like a week to build to the pay-per-view. This was what it felt like, although Redemption, they had months. And there was nothing that fit the theme of the show, right? So the theme of the show was Redemption, and I didn't really see anything worth, like, that was, a blood feud per se. They had Chris Jericho against Tommaso Ciampa, which you could consider that a blood feud, especially after this match they just had, and we'll get to that later. Other than that, I didn't really see anything that kind of fit the tone of that show, which would have been Kenny Omega against MJF. That fit the theme of the event. Even Darby Allin against Kevin Knight would have fit the theme based on their ongoing feuds. But I understand that they're moving things towards the big pay-per-view All In coming up at the end of August. So without further ado, let's, to quote Kenny Omega there, let's go and break down the card like a shotgun. So there was a 6-way ladder match to open up the event with to determine the number 1 contender for the International Championship. That was Mike Bailey, victorious over Jack Perry, the Beast Mortis, Commander, Nick Wayne, and El Clon. Fine for what it was. A lot of matches like that we have seen before with the X Division, for an example. The X Division would open up TNA pay-per-views for years and not a whole lot of build-up. It's like, let's get all the high-spot guys in the same ring and have them do crazy stuff and kill themselves for the entertainment of the crowd. It looked like that Canadian crowd was not too interested in that without proper selling to bring the moment up, right? And I didn't see a whole lot of that. Nick Wayne looked great. I hadn't seen him in a while. Apparently he's been with Ring of Honor and he's done sporadic spots on AEW Collision, which I've been missing lately. Nice to see Nick Wayne. He's looking great. He's looking like he put on a little bit of weight, so that's going to be good for him. And hopefully when he comes back to primetime television, there's a story there for him, which I assume they're going to be rekindling whatever they had with Christian that I feel never got resolved. Same with Luchasaurus, never got resolved. So hopefully they can tie those up when Nick Wayne returns to primetime television. I'd be looking forward to that. El Clone, looks like we got a little bit of a teaser because it looks like Hologram is going to be making his triumphant return so that they can have that Ryu versus Akuma type of a feud to maybe go into All In. That would be nice to finally get Hologram against his clone. So that's going to be interesting. Beast Mordos, it was nice seeing him. I hadn't seen him in a while. I don't think he was shelved per se. I think it was something with passport issues, visa issues, things of that note. So it was nice to see him back in the thick of things. And Jack Perry, the guy is just looking for an identity, I think, at this point. He's looking for a purpose. I'm pleased that he signed back with AEW. Hopefully with this re-signing, there's something for him to do. Ty Mello put an Instagram post about a pot and nurturing this tree so that it can grow, and the soil has to be right, and the pot was the problem, and she took it out of the pot and put the soil in the ground, and the ground helped build that tree up. Now, the pot can be a metaphor, it could be an allegory for a lot of things. Jack Perry right now is stuck in a pot, and he's not growing, and he needs to go find that the soil is better in the ground or in another area. Same with Sammy Guevara, same with Ty Mello. And hopefully they can find that ground with the soil mixed in with that ground, soil that they can really sprout and grow, because they're searching for an identity. And I would throw Anna Jay in that as well. Searching for a purpose, searching for a meaning to garner that, fanfare, that attention, that story, And Mike Bailey got the win here. He was in his hometown of Quebec, so that was nice for him to get the win. I would have much rather seen Mike Bailey go against Kevin Knight for Kevin Knight's TNT championship. That seemed to make more sense to me, but it looks like we're probably going to get Mike Bailey and Kyle Fletcher first. Mike Bailey loses because Kevin Knight interferes, much to the chagrin of Kyle Fletcher. Kyle Fletcher wonders why Kevin Knight got involved, and that's going to further their tension between each other, and then eventually we're going to get Kevin Knight against Kyle Fletcher, I assume. But until then, we're probably going to get Mike Bailey against Kevin Knight at All In. That's my guess on that. I don't know what you guys think. This match, like I said, was fine for what it was. It was a spot fest. Nothing that's going to be remembered in the next month or two. This was just to get a bunch of guys on the card that maybe haven't been on TV for a while, and to showcase them and to do crazy moves. Not a whole lot of rest in between to sell the moves and to sell the spectacular nature of the spots, but it was what it was, right? And that's the running theme for Redemption. It was what it was. And I'm going to be really critical here, because I have a feeling I'm going to be very critical with SummerSlam as well. So I'm just trying to be bipartisan here, guys. I'm calling it like I see it, right down the middle, like Bill Alfonso, daddy. So the next match, we saw the Young Bucks against Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley. And again, they were telling a story of Nick Jackson having the wind knocked out of him, potential concussion there, which I thought was really well done. It reminded me of when Owen Hart hit that, I think it was a Savat kick or enziguri to the back of the head of Shawn Michaels, and he was knocked unconscious, and they thought we had to stop the match, And then when he eventually came back, because he had to go away for a while after that match, he had to go away for a while, and then when he had that return match against Owen Hart, which was a grudge match at that point, Owen was going after the head, and we thought for a second that Michaels was going to have that same thing happen. That was just great selling, and it's not just about the selling of that moment. It adds to the tension, and you buy into the dramaticism of that. You're drawn in more because you're wondering if this is legitimate or not. Michaels played that really well. Nick Jackson, on the other hand, didn't sell it the best, because you go from possibly needing to be carried out because you're not able to continue the match because of a concussion to going for a super kick party with your brother Matt. That, to me, was a slight on the story that they were telling in this match, which didn't have a whole lot going into it. But I understand that Will Ospreay siding with Jon Moxley and the Death Riders is a slight on the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, who were Will Ospreay's friends, considering they might still be his friends, but that remains to be seen after the end of the show tonight. We'll get to that. I think they could have told a better story if they would have sold Nick Jackson being hurt more, but they had to have the double super kick. Matt could have pinned Jon Moxley and it would have been fine, guys, I think, personally. And you still could have played up the fact that maybe is Nick Jackson going to be healthy going into his tag match with Cope and Cage going in All In. I mean, there's a lot of tie-ins that you could have done there, and they failed to do that when Nick Jackson essentially no-sold that concussion and then came out later, but we'll get to that as well, and didn't seem to have any effects from that as well. So I understand they're trying to tell these stories and continue things on, but they have to be sold so that the audience can buy into them. Maybe not the diehard, hardcore sicko fans in AEW. Maybe they don't care, but audience members that are tuning in, some people like to buy into the drama. Some people like to feel like there's some tension there and get invested emotionally in moments like that. And you discredit that by not spending enough time, just like in the six-way at the beginning, to really focus on that, okay? So the Young Bucks get the win here, and there was some teasing of dissension between Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley, because Jon Moxley wants Will Ospreay to have that dog in him and realize that he's going to have to win by any means necessary, and it's not about friends, which, you know, the Death Riders has been predicated on, which I believe at some point the Death Riders are going to eat themselves alive from the inside with that type of a mentality. So that's a real good Easter egg for a future dissension in the Death Riders, where there is really no camaraderie, there's no real brotherhood, there's just guys that get together and they want to win competitively, and they don't care who they stomp on to get there. So the next Continental Classic, for instance, they did tease that with Claudio and Jon Moxley, but maybe when Pac and Jon Moxley get into the ring, maybe Pac is going to take that personal and really go after Moxley and go in for a kill. I mean, they could really tell a story with that, because we already know that Pac is unhinged, right? And we've seen teases of him eventually leaving the Death Riders. So you can always return to that and rekindle that in some form or fashion. This match was probably one of the better matches of the night, in my opinion. It told a really good story up until the end. Nothing that would blow you away, but there was a story there that they were stretching throughout the match, which I quite liked. And I do like this story with Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay and inserting Kenny Omega into it. It's being threaded very well. And it's in a story that's not being beaten over your head with announcers going like, pay attention to this. This is the important part. Do you see? Sometimes that's fun. Sometimes you don't really need that, and that can be excessive, right? Like Shivani's commentary sometimes can be excessive. We don't need to know all the time that this is the best thing going, or this match is a lot of fun, or this is the best 3 matches that I've seen back-to-back in a long time, knowing that the same thing was said the month prior. We don't need to hear that. We don't need that beaten over our head. Let us decide. We'll decide. The crowd in the audience will decide. And they decided that it wasn't that in the audience. So sometimes we don't need to be beaten over the head with those types of things. Watching the match in a bubble, though, I thought it was well done to progress the story of Will Ospreay trying to get the AEW World Championship and being torn on whether or not he should shed everything he is, everything that makes him who he is, so that he can win. And will he actually do it? That remains to be seen. So the Young Bucks get the win there. The next match is Kyle Fletcher against Bandito. This match was fine for what it was as well. Honestly, it was great. It went over 25 minutes. However, in my opinion, they wrestled a main event style that more than likely exhausted a crowd that really wasn't committed as it stood. And it was only the third or fourth match of the night. It was like the fourth match of the night. So those types of matches that they had, like Fletcher and Bandito had, should be reserved for the main event or second to main event, in my opinion, because the crowd needs to stay fresh for the rest of the matches that are going on. And that's a subjective opinion, guys. I understand that. I just think pacing is important when building the card. And when you have something like a 25-minute match where they're kicking out of everything and not leaving anything on the table, and this match really was built last minute, it's just kind of weird that they went all out the way that they did. And I like Kyle Fletcher a lot. I think he's a great talent. Same with Bandito. I think those are future superstars in AEW. I mean, they're pretty much already superstars in AEW. Kyle Fletcher really coming into his own the last couple of years. However, it's Kyle Fletcher, sometimes he can have a 12-minute match. How is he? All of his matches have gone over 20 minutes. It's kind of wild, and I don't think he needs to have every single match go over 25 minutes in order to get his shit off or in order to tell a story. Sometimes it could be a quick in and out. Show the dominance. If he's having 25 minutes matches every single time, it lessens his dominance, in my opinion. And I know that Bandito is a great talent, but he hasn't been as dominant and as formidable as we have seen in AEW. In Ring of Honor, sure, he's a Ring of Honor World Champion. And it's kind of sad that he's losing here. And I know that that's probably what was going on in the creative meeting, where they were like, well, we've got to keep the heat on Bandito because he's the Ring of Honor champion. We can't just have him lose in 12 minutes. So you put yourself in kind of like a double-edged sword scenario when you do stuff like that. And like I said, guys, the match was great. Probably one of the better matches of the night, if not the best match of the night. However, with no story being told and this match just thrown together, these guys fought like this was a grudge match. These guys fought like it was for the AEW World Championship. So now the AEW World Title match has to step it up in order to compete with this. And it's only the fourth match of the night out of 10 matches on the card, right? So you got to take that into account. And the crowd really was burnt out after this, and it took a while to get the crowd back in their favor, judging from the next match. And we'll get to the next match. It was the Dogs. Kyle Fletcher got the win, by the way. He's going to be wrestling Mike Bailey in Mexico at Arena Mexico, which is going to be a great match. And I think they're going to be building towards Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita and Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight seems to be the way to go for All In. So they're going to get there, and they're probably going to have those four intermingle. Maybe Konosuke Takeshita against Kevin Knight at some point. There seems like they're going to work these guys around and have these four work with each other until they get to All In. So we'll see how they go about that. But those two matches seem to be a lock. Like I said, great match, probably match of the night, but just was a lot as the fourth match. It's kind of it'll suck the air out of the room, right? And I get it. AEW sickos, they need more matches. They need the best matches, the longest matches, and all that stuff. It's great. Meltzer's probably going to give it a lot of great star ratings, and these two talents are phenomenal. And I want to make a note real quick before I go with the rest of the card. I don't want to spend up too much of your guys' time, but nothing I'm saying is a slight on the talent, you guys. This is all about the creative, the pacing, the way that they're setting the shows up. That's what it's about. I would never discredit the talent. I don't care if it's the worst talent in the locker room or the worst wrestler in the locker room. I'm never going to slight the talent because I know how hard it is to go out there and work and put on a great show. I've never been a wrestler, so I have no reason to talk about what it is to be a professional wrestler and what constitutes great or hard working from my perspective. But I will tell you if the match is bad, and I will tell you if creative is bad. And right now, thus far, since going over this show, it hasn't been a whole lot of the wrestling has been bad. It's a whole lot of the way that they have been pacing this out. They started an hour earlier. Every match doesn't need to be 20 minutes. And that's my subjective opinion on that, you guys, straight up. So the next match is the double chain tag team match. The Dogs against the Bang Bang Gang, Jay White and Juice Robinson, who we haven't seen team in a while. And remember, they had a match of the year with FTR not too long ago. So they are definitely a formidable tag team. This would be a good opportunity to give the Dogs a rub there so that they can build themselves up. Cerberus, that's a great name for them, the three-headed dogs. I don't know why they haven't gone with that name and instead they go with just the Dogs. Cerberus, I believe is the name of it. That's great. That's a name that, would strike fear in the hearts, and it's got a great ring to it. And I even seen it on the little screen when they're coming out. It's the three-headed dogs. It's like, it's right there for you. Maybe they had copyright issues with that name, but that would have been a perfect name for Dave Finlay, Clark Connors, and Gabe Kidd. And whenever Gabe Kidd decides to turn about, and Clark Connors, for instance, he doesn't look like he has that dog in him. You know what I mean? He doesn't. He looks more like a Shar-Pei puppy when you look at Dave Finlay and Gabe Kidd. I mean that respectfully. I'm kidding. But Shivani said this wasn't like a classic chain match here. It was basically a match to go and fight and bleed, but there was no blood. So I don't know. That was interesting. Finlay and Clark get a big win here to establish them as a threat in the tag division and as a subset of the Death Riders. The right move here, in my opinion, but I certainly hope we see more of Jay White and Juice Robinson, especially when this tag team division starts to increase with the rumors of Motor City Machine Gun and the New Era, which is what I affectionately call them. I don't know what they're going to be called when they go to AEW, but in WWE they were known as the New Day. Kofi and Austin Creed are going to show up in AEW. That's probably pretty much a given. I think New Era has a really nice ring to it, but we'll see how that goes about. But yeah, more of Jay White and Juice Robinson as a tag team. I hope we see more of the Gun Club as well. Ace Austin still seems like he doesn't really fit in with the Bang Bang Gang. It doesn't, the Gang Bang Gang. Sorry. I'm kidding. It just seems like he's not a good fit. Honestly, Ace Austin and Clark Connors, they don't fit in their roles right now. Clark Connors in the Dogs and Ace Austin in the Bang Bang Gang, they seem like if they came together, it would make more sense. That's just me. Maybe that's WWE brain. I know, guys, sometimes I have that. It just seems like those two would fit better as a tag team than their respective slots in their stable. That's just my opinion. Match suffered because the crowd really wasn't into it. Like I said, you gave them a 25-minute slugfest between Kyle Fletcher and Bandito the match prior, and they threw everything but the kitchen sink in that match. Probably the kitchen sink would have gotten involved if it was no DQ. And so the crowd was it took a while to get them back in it. And this next match also suffered the same fate because the Dogs against Bang Bang Gang was another almost 20-minute match, you guys. That's another almost 20-minute match. That match could have gone 13 minutes easily and established everything they needed to establish. Same with this one, Maya World against Hikaru Shida. 16-minute match for the TBS Championship. Maya World gets the win on her birthday. She's celebrating these milestones in AEW, which is really good in building up her character, and I enjoy that. Hikaru Shida had a cup of coffee as the TBS champion right when she was starting to establish her heel persona. I don't know why they decided to give her the championship just to transition it to Maya World. Not sure where that was going in. Not having Chris Statlander get involved at all either was also an interesting choice. Not that she needed to interfere in the match to lessen Maya World's victory here, but there is a story going on between Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida. If I'm not mistaken, they have not concluded that, and so that's up in the air, and I haven't seen Chris Statlander that much since the feud has started, because Hikaru Shida and Chris Statlander used to be a tag team. They split up, so it's interesting that they're going this way with Maya World. Depending on how they go about this, I don't know if Tekla is going to be challenging Maya World for the TBS Championship now that she's not the women's champion, spoiler alert, or if Tekla is going to go the way of Stardom and maybe wrestle someone from Stardom at All In, which I would like to see that play out as well, because that was also a story that's been upheld, upended, suspended, if you will, since Forbidden Door. So Maya World gets the victory here. I'm pleased that they are really trying to get her going and really establish her and get her over, because they're using that momentum and it's working thus far. But it's all about her dance partners. Remember, she's still she's still a fresh-faced wrestler in AEW, still searching for identity outside of these big milestones and tragic events that have happened. And so it's important to get her the right dance partner so that it can help build her up. I would love to see her work with Athena, get Athena back on Dynamite so that those two can work with each other. I think it's time. I was expecting Maya to go to Ring of Honor to be the first person to pin Athena since her record-breaking Ring of Honor women's title run. I thought that would have been better. I'm sure that they can do Maya 2 belts, because the 2 belts thing is just, everybody wants to say it. Kevin Knight wants to say it. Mercedes Moné has said it. ESPN wants to say it. SportsCenter wants to say it. It's not just me that's saying it. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of people want to become 2 belts. So maybe that's kind of the thing that they might do with Maya World. Who knows? So we'll see how that goes. I think, the match wasn't the best match, to be honest with you. And that goes to say, and look, not discrediting the talent. Again, like I said, I'm not poo-pooing on the talent here, but I'm calling out something. Maya World had one of the greatest matches she's ever had in her career against Mercedes Moné. And she hasn't had a lot. But, that was a well-told story. It played out really well because of the dance partner. I think a lot of that can be attributed to Mercedes Moné. There was a lot of miscommunication with this match with Hikaru Shida and Maya World. It could have been better. Maybe they needed a better layout. Maybe they needed more practice. I'm not sure. But it just didn't have that same type of chemistry. And suffering from that lack of chemistry was the crowd not being involved. And I think when you couple those two scenarios together, it just wasn't the greatest match. And like I said, not trying to crap on the talent there, but I'm just calling it like I see it. Right down the middle, Daddy. The next match was Cope and Cage against the Death Riders, Claudio and Pac. Another match that went almost 20 minutes. This is crazy at this point, right? This match didn't really need to go 20 minutes as well. It really didn't. It didn't need to. It was overstaying its welcome at certain points, in my opinion. Cage and Cope retain here. Claudio and Pac are, they're suitable in their roles of looking dominant in short bursts in a couple of segments on television and then losing big ones. Pac, bridesmaid, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. That poor guy, but he understands his role. He does it effectively well. This was what Scott Keith would call perfectly acceptable wrestling. Not much to talk about outside of that, other than of note, the Young Bucks coming out and going face-to-face with Cope and Cage, making it official that there's not going to be multiple tag teams, at least for now, in this All-In tag title match. It will just be Cope and Cage against the Bucks. So we'll see how they roll that out in the coming weeks. And it looked like Nick Jackson showed no signs of not being well or being concussed, which I think was a disappointment. They could have really utilized that a little bit better, in my opinion. But I some of those things, it's all in the details, guys. It's really all in the details. So the next match was the Painmaker Chris Jericho against Tommaso Ciampa, no holds bar match. Again, 23-minute match. So again, another match, in my opinion, overstayed its welcome. Didn't have to have all of 23 minutes to tell this story. This was a brutal match, guys. They even used a drill, which is insanity to me. And I'm not sure in this match when, because it was a lot of blood and guts, and it was a hardcore match, right? And I'm not sure the Painmaker character really works with Chris Jericho. It was a little goofy, in my opinion. All respect to Jericho here, but this was his Mr. Pogo type of character, or maybe it's Sushi Onita. I don't know, but it was a little goofy. I haven't seen a lot of it in Japan, so I'm not sure where the lore of this character is, so forgive me for not knowing the history behind this character. I just felt like it wasn't taken very serious. It was more of like a clown, like it was interesting. Tommaso Ciampa getting that drill to the head, though, I'm not sure if he quit or if the referee just called it off, but if it's no holds barred, I would hope that Tommaso Ciampa just quit, but I know that's kind of a brutal thing to do, so I was torn by why they just called that match off the way that they did. I would hope that the announcers expound on this, which is a problem that I see a lot with the commentary team, which they're so busy calling the match play-by-play, and they have a hard time really establishing what's going on in the moment. It's more of I'm going to tell you move after move after move, and maybe talk a little bit about the wrestlers, but not too much is given towards the history and the backstory and what's going on outside of that, which I think, Excalibur does great by doing the play-by-play, and I'm going to be honest, he doesn't do great. But he fulfills his role of telling us what a Gamangiri is, or a Meteora, because we hear him say that 37 times a night, because wrestlers use that ad nauseum, which I'm almost sick of hearing it, to be honest with you. And Taz establishes things as far as the history of moves. Tony Schiavone is there to tell us how great everything is. Nigel McGuinness provides like that smarmy type of a commentary tilt. Ian Riccaboni does very similar to what Excalibur do, so they kind of cross each other out. There needs to be someone there that's kind of describing the history and why these guys are wrestling and what the stories are and all that, which kind of gets missed and left on the table. And again, I'm not trying to contradict myself of what I said earlier as far as like, you know, not shoving it down our throat saying, hey, pay attention to this, but you do want commentary to provide some sort of emphasis on what's going on, because a little knowledge goes a long way and helps us get more invested in what's going on in the ring. So Jericho gets the win here. Again, match really overstayed its welcome, but it was what it was. It was a no-holds-barred match. Andrade El Idolo battled Mark Davis for the national championship. This match went 16 minutes. Andrade's character is just really coming into its own. It's really being solidified in a real way, and I'm really glad that Tony Khan is letting that breathe. Similar, I hope he allows Leo Rush to breathe like that, because those two really are coming into their own and getting a lot of attention based on their characters. And I enjoy this like playboy character of Andrade El Idolo, albeit he is a fan favorite. It really works. I like the dynamic there. And Mark Davis, of course, establishes his role as best as he possibly can. They haven't really given him a chance to show his dominance, but again, Tony Khan doesn't really utilize these big guys the way that I would have liked to see them utilized growing up. I like to see, you know, the Sid Vicious, the Kevin Nash, that type of character. Mark Davis has an array of moves, and he has a really well established menace to his character. But just like Brian Cage, in my opinion, they haven't got the chance to show that dominance and that consistency in winning big matches on pay-per-view. They don't need to win all the big matches on the pay-per-view, but they need at least one big match win on the pay-per-view to show that they are capable. When they're not winning those types of matches, it kind of defines them down a little bit, in my opinion. But Andrade gets the win here. Not sure where he's going to go from here. Is he going to go after? Is Swerve going to go after the national championship? Are we going to see someone from the Don Callis family challenge Andrade El Idolo? That remains to be seen. Looking at the roster of guys on the Don Callis group there's not a whole lot aside from maybe a Kazuchika Okada Andrade El Idolo match, which I believe, is that a first time ever match? That would be pretty good. You know, Andrade calling one of his, Kazuchika Okada calling Andrade, one of Andrade's ladies, a bitch. That I can see can kick off something there, and that would be entertaining. So Andrade El Idolo against Okada at All In, you can count me in for that. That would be really good, especially if we see the Okada that we saw against Konosuke Takeshita. That's big time. So maybe they can do something with that. You know, I'm hoping that they go in that direction. I would like to see that. Willow Nightingale wins the AEW Women's World Championship over Tekla. 17-minute match here. I love Willow Nightingale, okay? And I'm not going to crap on I'm not going to crap on who she is as a talent. But there's going to be Willow Nightingale fatigue coming soon, because they are shoving her down our throats a lot, and I understand that they had to move things around because of injuries. You know, Monet coming into the tournament, the Owen Hart Cup tournament, and Willow Nightingale being the TBS champion and then having to lose it because she was injured. Was she really injured is the question. They haven't really we don't really understand that, but I think they're doing a lot with Willow, and I feel like we're setting up as she's going to have like a month title reign. She's probably going to lose it to Mercedes Moné, because Willow Nightingale has a win over Mercedes Moné here. She beat her for the TBS championship, so I think Moné gets her revenge and wins the AEW Women's World Championship for the first time. I believe that's the story that should be told, and so I really hope that they're understanding that too much of something is never a good thing, right? And that's like what I see with Danhausen in the WWE is the same thing. Cody Rhodes as well. You shove that person down our throat and crowds could start to turn. And I've read, on a serious note, I've read some stuff that Willow Nightingale is going through. It's not my business to talk about it, but you can go look it up. It's on Google. And I just wonder if maybe they're putting a lot of pressure on Willow and thrusting her in the spotlight without a proper purpose. You know, that fly by the seat of your pants type of a booking is going to hurt these these young up-and-coming talent, if they don't have a vision, if they don't have that journey that they need to get to, that purpose. And I really hope that they find a purpose for Willow Nightingale, especially after she drops this title, which I believe she's going to drop the title to Monet at All In. I really hope there's something for her on the other side, because look at Chris Statlander right now. She's swimming in the abyss, and she's trying to find that purpose. She's trying to find something. She tried to go back to being an alien. Then she went back to being a Terminator. Then she went, she's looking for something to cling on to, and I hope that doesn't happen with Willow Nightingale, because I really like her as a person, and I love her as a talent, but there's got to be a purpose, or she's just going to be in the abyss. She's really on the cusp of being in the abyss, and she's also on the cusp of being overused. So you got to find that balance. The match was fine for what it was. I love Tekla. I love her mannerisms. I love the fact that she's like this Luna Vachon like type of a character. But then even her, she's starting to become cartoonish a little bit. They're starting to lean on her calling everybody dumb bitches. Okada calls somebody a bitch. Now Tekla's calling somebody a dumb bitch. I think that when Tekla first came in, she was this little scrappy, dominant, type of a fighter that was going after Queen Aminata, and they were brawling and hitting each other hard. Get her back to that. And she can also do the balance of that would be for her cartoonish, like unhinged commentary and mic work. Toni Storm, not sure where she's at. That would be a great dance partner for her at All In. Not sure if she's going to be ready to come back. Not sure if the rumors about her were true. So depending on that happening, I think you could slide Tekla into the TBS title division going against Maya World. I think that would be suitable for her, because I think she would be a good dance partner for Maya World. So we're hoping to see something like that happen, but keep the momentum on Tekla. Don't let her get lost in the shuffle. She had a great 7 or 8 month women's title reign. She was holding the women's division up by a silly string while Monet was gone, and while there wasn't, and Toni Storm was gone. And I think she did an adequate job. So let's keep the momentum on her and find something for her that's meaningful when going into All In. That's my opinion. The match, fine for what it was. Could have been a lot better if there would have been a little bit more drama involved. Sky Blue getting involved. Maybe Tekla has something to say about Sky Blue getting involved. There could be something with that. The Triangle of Terror, the Sisters of Sin, or whatever they're called. There needs to be more development and progress and purpose there, because Julia was on the forefront. When Tekla came in, she took over as the lead and left Julia kind of behind the scenes with Sky Blue. They haven't really established Sky Blue and Julia Hart outside of just being behind Tekla. Maybe they need some more development with that, so that they can be more solidified. That would be good. And harsh criticism, guys, but this is just calling it like I see it. Wait till you hear me talk about SummerSlam, because it's going to be very similar. Very similar, you guys. I gotta be honest about all this stuff. And finally, the main event is Kenny Omega defeating Kevin Knight. 25-minute match. This match wasn't as good as Kyle Fletcher against Bandito, but they had a lot to work with there. That was the best match of the night, and this match was kind of thrown together on the fly. I think Kevin Knight is a phenomenal talent. He's going to need some work establishing himself on the mic, which will come with time. I mean, he worked in New Japan. They didn't really do a lot of promos, in the ring in Japan. So give him some time. I think he's going to really come into his own. They gave him new music. He's got, that bombastic type of a character. He's already causing dissension with his cocky, bombastic attitude, while Kyle Fletcher's in the Don Callis family, which is what we saw a little bit with Konosuke Takeshita and Kazuchika Okada. So seems like they're going to run that similar storyline with that dissension there, with Andrade was doing the same thing. I think it's a long road for Kevin Knight, but it was nice to see that. It was very similar, reminiscent of Jack Perry against Bryan Danielson, when Bryan Danielson won the AEW World Championship, and then he had to defend on pay-per-view against Jack Perry, who was the TNT champion. I feel like they kind of went to the well one too many times with the TNT champion challenging the AEW World Champion, and I understand it's to show the hierarchy there and to show that the TNT championship is sort of like in the WWF what it used to be with the Intercontinental Championship. I totally understand that. However, you want to be careful going to the well too many times with that, especially with a character like Kevin Knight, who needs a little bit more of a dominant run before he starts to do stuff like that. We need to show that he can prove himself against top acts. He did get a win over Darby Allin, which is great, former AEW World Champion, so that was really good, and I do got to give him kudos for that. However, what's Kevin Knight going to do going into All In? And the only thing I can see is Mike Bailey, which kind of defines him down a little bit, because Mike Bailey is still a lower mid-card type of a talent that's still looking for his character as well. So aside from that tag team exploding at All In, what else are you going to do for Kevin Knight? There's got to be purpose. That's all I'm saying. You don't have to book like Paul Heyman, book for years down the line in AEW, but week to week is going to hurt some of these younger guys if they don't have a purpose. All going back to that tree in the pot. Let's get it in the ground so that it can really sprout out and get the branches going, especially for Kevin Knight, because I see so much in him. And this was a good showcase for him, but definitely wasn't a career-making performance, if that makes any sense. And at the end there, so Jon Moxley comes out. He attacks Kenny Omega with the Death Riders. Will Ospreay comes out and is like, what are you guys doing? And Moxley tries to ease into talking to Will Ospreay, and then gives him a bag and wants him to put the bag over the head of Kenny Omega. And I've seen a lot of people confused about this moment here, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I saw here. Omega hesitates, or Ospreay hesitates over Omega for a little bit longer than he should have, right? Like, he stood over there for a long time with that bag. Maybe he was building tension. Maybe he was trying to confuse the Death Riders. Maybe he was trying to find that inner, dog, that Death Rider dog in him. And he might have thought, maybe this is something I need to do, right? In order to establish myself in the Death Riders, because he had been trained with them for so long. However long, whatever he was thinking, it took a little bit longer than it should have. So when he tore the bag up and started attacking the Death Riders, that was supposed to be a big crowd cheering moment. But Omega looked at it as, were you really going to put that bag over my head? Because it seemed like it, so fuck off, right? And that's why he attacked Ospreay. That's what I saw. I saw someone that was fed up with this idea that Ospreay, who he's been nothing but gracious to and nothing but friendly towards, even while Ospreay was maneuvering with this group of sinister guys in the Death Riders who haven't established themselves as a fan favorite at all. They're aligned with the Dogs, who are devious as well. And Ospreay's kind of this, bright light amongst these shadow groups of guys. Omega's like, you're becoming these guys. That's BS. And you almost in my career. I might not have been able to even go to All In if you would have done something like that. So I understand Omega doing that. However, what I also see subsequently is on Wednesday, even after Ospreay attacked the Death Riders, for Moxley to show back up and tell Ospreay, see, this is why I told you you need to do what you need to do, because there are no friends. Look at what your friend did to you after you saved him. Which I think, if they go that route, could be a very fascinating story beat, because I really feel, and I know this is going to be dangerous doing this in Wembley Stadium, but I really feel like we're going to see that bag come into play when Omega and Ospreay meet again. And maybe Omega looks at that bag to put over the head of Ospreay, and the 40,000 in attendance are going to be booing Omega, right? And not in a... AEW blurs the lines of good guy, bad guy, especially with this type of a match here. So even though the crowd is going to probably shit all over Omega grabbing that bag and thinking about putting it over Ospreay's head, Omega's going to put the bag away, because maybe Moxley throws it in the ring and leaves it for anybody to pick it up, and Omega picks it up, looks at Ospreay, thinks about doing it. I initially thought it was going to be a screwdriver. Maybe it is a bag. Right? And Omega looks at the bag and then tosses it aside, goes to try to pin Ospreay. There's kickouts, there's big moves, whatever. Then Ospreay goes to grab the bag and looks like he's going to put it over Omega's head. And then Ospreay looks at the crowd, and that's where I feel like the crowd would be screaming no, right? That's that emotional investment that they're hoping for. Don't do it. Win it the right way. Do it the right way. While Moxley on the outside is screaming for Ospreay to do it, because it's the only way he's going to win. And it's that pivotal moment that Ospreay decides to do it the right way and actually does it the right way. And I think that's an established moment that's really going to be memorable. And that's what you're looking for when you're looking for a big main event like that, is something that the fans remember, something that they can take home and remember. And even though you're playing with their hearts with two fan favorites doing something that could be considered bad there, that's realistic. That's the human emotion at its purest art form. The psychology behind that is something that we haven't really seen in professional wrestling, at least in America, on a large level. So Ospreay doing that and then winning decisively without using the bag, now we have an enemy for Ospreay. It's Moxley. Because Moxley invested all of that time on Ospreay for him not to do things the way that he taught him to do. Now you have an enemy for Ospreay, and then you have Omega as well, teaming with Ospreay. You can go so many different routes with that. You obviously can do Will Ospreay against Dave Finlay Jr., Gabe Kidd, John Moxley, Pac, Claudio Castagnoli. You can go so many different routes with that. You've got opponents for Ospreay for the next 6-7 months, because I hope that Ospreay has a long title reign here. And then he's got his buddies. He's got the Bucks. He's got Kenny Omega. He's got Hangman Adam Page. And I still hope we get that moment where Hangman Adam Page shows up and talks to Ospreay, because he notices that Ospreay might be interested in using a bag. And Hangman can be that voice of reason. He can be that guy that tells him, don't lose yourself going after the AEW World title, because look what that did to me. I think that's a phenomenal moment, a very pivotal moment that they can utilize, because if you look at the career of Hangman Adam Page, he lost all his friends at one point. He got into drinking. He became an alcoholic. He burned down homes. He lost himself in the throes of going after the AEW World title. And that's something that you can really focus on Ospreay, and have somebody like that really give him that, because he's not going to listen to Omega. He's probably not going to listen to the Bucks. And he's torn with Moxley. When you have Hangman Adam Page be that voice of reason, it really makes sense considering the trajectory of Hangman Adam Page. So I really hope they go that route. Honest opinion of Redemption, it was 2 episodes of Dynamite combined into one. I hate to break it to you. Wasn't their best. And I'm going to start doing more reviews of AEW pay-per-views. They just end so late, you guys. Like right now, it's super late. You're probably not going to get this video until the morning. I think that's one of the things with AEW pay-per-views that sometimes suffer. When I have to go to work and I have a life outside of this, it's really hard to put the review out, on a Tuesday morning. If the pay-per-view happened on Sunday. If it happens on Saturday, I got time. If it happens on Sunday, it's really tough. It just so happens I have a little bit of time tonight, so I decided to do this review. It's very long-winded, but I have a lot to say about it, and I also wanted to be honest in my criticism. My subjective opinion is that this pay-per-view was just good. The matches are going to be good no matter what. The talent are going to put on great matches no matter what, but it's all about the pacing. It's all about the way that they tell the stories creatively, and I just think this was thrown together so last minute that it really didn't have a chance to really establish itself as far as the brand Redemption and as far as what it was trying to tell. It was just a road, a little bit of a road to get to All In, and not a very memorable one. But you know what? Go out of your way to see Kenny Omega and Kevin Knight for the post-match. Will Ospreay and John Moxley against the Young Bucks, and Kyle Fletcher and Bandito. And of course, they had a lot of title changes. I assume that they're going to have a couple of surprises going into Wednesday as we gear up for the road to AEW All In. So that's what I thought, guys. Let me know down below what you thought of AEW Redemption. Let me know in the comment section below. And thank you again for watching. And if you like this some more, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell, because you never know when I'll be reporting from the portal of pro wrestling. It's the Wrestling Old Head, you guys. I'll see you in the next one.